Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. We warn you ahead of time, strap in, you're gonna learn a lot. This is one of my favorite groups to brainstorm with. Of course, welcome to Continuing Conversations. I'm Michael Dismuke, a freelance writer for Star Trek Adventures RPG, lead writer on Captain's Log, freelance writer for Star Trek publications, and a lot of other good stuff. Always check out michaeldismuke.com if you have questions. Co-hosting this show now, going into our 4th year with the fantabulous Jim Johnson.
Hey, everybody. Jim Johnson. I am the project manager and line editor for the Star Trek Adventures RPG and the Captain's Log solo RPG. And I project manage a few other things from Modiphius that you'll be seeing in the coming months and years. Co-host on this year's show with Michael for 4+ years now, 165, 166 odd episodes, something like that, working our way toward 200, which I think maybe we'll do something different and we'll just like breeze on by it and just like not make a big deal out of it. And
only if people demand it. Let's do only
people demand it. Yeah.
If people don't demand it, we do nothing. We just.
I think you should like live stream with like the green bodysuits or something like that. You know,
I'd be willing. I might just fly out to wherever Jim's at and figure something out.
There you go. We'll make something fun happen. Anyway, so excited for this show. We have two very special guests on our show tonight. They are no strangers to this show. We are no strangers to them. I think collectively we've been on each other's shows quite a few times. It's the wonderful duo from Dice and Mind, Brad and Jason. I will not burden you with having to name your favorite series and favorite captain because you've already done that. So I'll just have you introduce yourself and introduce yourselves. And if there's anything new and exciting that you want to plug, by all means do that. And then we'll just jump into the conversation. So Jason, why don't you go, and then Brad.
Yeah, thanks, guys. So nice to be back here. It's just lovely, and everyone watching, listening doesn't know this, but like in the past month, not even, I've been able to either have lunch or coffee with both of you in person, and that was really a treat. Jason Kaufman, I get to co-host Dice and Mind with Brad, which is one of my absolute favorite things to do these days. Otherwise, I've been busy not playing much, but writing. In real life, I'm a professor at Minnesota State University, Mankato. And slowly, I slowly just try. Oh, you can't see that because of Zoom. I've got my D20s and my chips, and hopefully trying to play more. But that's probably for now. We'll plug stuff along the way.
Yeah. Brad Browne, again, like Jason said, Jason and I have known each other for years. So we started Dice and Mind, first episode back in 2021. One of the great joys of my life being able to actually, for him and I, to do something together like this. And one of the great joys of us doing the podcast was being able to connect with both of you, and being able to have both of you on the show. I became a fan of STA back when it launched in 2017. For me, I work in the tech industry originally as a project manager and so on. And that's about it these days. Just keeping busy. Like Jason said, we don't get to play a whole lot with everything going on, but now that the holidays are over, and hopefully, both of us are up here in the upper Midwest. So winter is in full effect as things quiet down. We'll have a little bit of time and hopefully get to roll more.
Hey, perfect reason to get snowed in. I would love to get snowed in with some dice and have no choice.
I think, Jim, you probably have gotten more snow than we've gotten. I don't know if you got snow with this latest storm, but
we literally just got 8 to 10 inches today, starting last night, and then this afternoon we got about 7 inches last night and this morning, and then it tapered off, and then we just got 2 more a couple hours ago. So now it's tapered off again. But
I won't talk how I was walking in a tank top.
That's all right.
We're north of you, and I have no snow on the ground.
We have no snow here either.
Well, yeah, I was just in Minnesota.
Oh, yes, you were. Yeah,
it looks the same, Jim. It's just significantly colder.
It was green grass and it was balmy compared to here now.
Yeah,
I want to talk about how fun it is too, because in all the years that we've done this show, just so you all know, me and Jim have never met in person, and so Jason, though, was able to meet both of us. So Jason flew out to Castro Valley, California to visit family out here. And so took him to one of my favorite little diners, little hometown spot here. And I can say that we should have had a microphone set up because we could have definitely taped a podcast episode with
Very
what we
true.
talked about for 90 minutes, right?
For sure.
Oh, and
The name of the episode could be The 6 Degrees of Jason Kaufman.
oh God, I was just kidding. And ironically, Michael, you introduced me to the author Brandon Sanderson.
Yes.
And so when I got home, I started looking him up on the YouTube videos about writing.
Right.
And then one of my daughters was like, yeah, my younger daughter and my older daughter are interested in reading one of his YA novels, like just complete coincidence.
Oh, wow.
And then we were checking out at Barnes & Noble and the bookseller's like, oh, you should check out if you're interested, blah, blah, blah. So I'm like 3 days into Mistborn, and it all started with you like, you should check out his videos about writing.
Oh yeah. He's an expert class. He's a master class on how to structure a novel. Really appreciate it. Now, how did your meeting go with Jim?
No,
Wow.
I mean, this is the second time Jim and I have gotten together, which is awesome because you come up here annually for family, and so this time it was briefer, and that was just on my end because we had just gotten back late the night before, and so just with everything and all the unpacking, but I mean, it's always great, and it's always, my wife's like, you're going to be gone for hours, aren't you? I'm like, no, this is just coffee, babe. We're just going to meet for he's leaving in another day or two. Yeah, we were there for like 3 hours. Yeah.
You missed 3 episodes we could have had. 3 episodes.
Next time I'll have to figure out how to bring a portable recorder or something, and just it'd be like, live continuing conversation, unplugged or something.
Next time I will be there. I have a 1 gigabyte iPad. I will just bring that and hit record on the iPad. And
guys, we all have phones. They record.
You're right.
Yeah,
and
but you will be
those
here
little
next
fuzzy
time.
mics that the quality is amazing on them. I really
the lavaliers.
Yeah. I have that.
There you go.
Now, go ahead, Jim.
I was just gonna say we could have a conversation while we're walking the stacks at Barnes and Noble, and we can critique books as we're walking by.
Book talk with Jim, Brad, Michael, and Jason.
There you go.
Yeah,
that'd be fun. Okay, and we're going to talk books today. In fact, we know that Jason and Brad, the reason we're having you on today is because of an amazing project that we all are able and privileged to collaborate on. But first, I think, Jason, it would be good for you to give an introduction to your first book you did about leadership in Star Trek and how it's leading into the second book, just to frame it for people who may not be familiar.
Really, thanks. Is it a second book, Jace?
Well, I'm going to get to that. I appreciate that, but thanks. Yeah, thanks, Jim.
And there it is, right there.
Yeah. Love what they do with that cover.
Leadership in Star Trek: Lessons from the Captain's Chair. Jason Kaufman, Aaron Peterson. Go get yourself a copy. It's good stuff.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. Please do. There's nothing like the post-holiday season for finding sales. No, seriously though, I'll just start with, I'm just so thrilled. I'm grateful. Aaron and I are both grateful that you all were willing to write chapters for the anthology. It's been so much fun. So in a nutshell, a little bit of the background so that it makes sense. So the book I'm referring to and that Michael referred to is an anthology of essays on leadership in Star Trek. And it's intentionally diffuse in focus. And what I mean by that is when Aaron, my friend and co-author, when we were planning this, well, let me back up for a sec. The first book that Jim just shared, that came out August, I was going to say last year, but it's 2025 now. That came out August of 2023. By the time that book had come out in print, I was already knee deep in writing, in a sense, a follow-up, which then just sat. Aaron was really busy, but basically we wrote a book on leadership in Star Trek and kind of ended with the notion of, the captains do so well in part because so many of them demonstrate humility in their leadership. And we were very compelled. Like, I was viscerally compelled to work on that first book. Like, I felt it had to be said. And as we were wrapping up, like literally wrapping up to give our editor, Ed McFarland, just the draft full manuscript, I started feeling that fire again of, okay, but don't we have to say something directly about humility? And this was when Strange New Worlds had already been out for a season-ish. So it just rolled over. As we were finishing that manuscript, season 2 had just started. And I mean, the humility written into the character of Captain Pike, I don't know if the writer's room is doing it intentionally, but it's happening. And it's just beautifully written, beautifully acted. And so we wrote a second book, which ironically, only a handful of months ago we got a contract for. So that's actually going to come out after the anthology. But so we worked on that, and as we were wrapping up that, it was, to be honest, kind of the question of, okay, we just wrote a book on humility and leadership. Who the hell are we to do that? Like, aren't shouldn't we be asking everybody else? And so. We'd recently interviewed Brad. You and I had interviewed a couple a couple gals, couple professors on Dyson Mind in terms of their respective Star Wars and Star Trek anthologies, and they weren't leadership focused, but they were really, really cool, right? Amy and Emily, they were just wonderful, and they're really cool anthologies.
Amy
and all of this,
Sturgis and Emily Strand, right?
thank you, and
Great
all,
interviews.
and
Those
all
are
of, I
on
mean, just
Dyson Mind. I
really,
listen to them. They're great.
yeah,
Mhm.
just really lovely people and really good thinkers and humanists, right? They're writers. They're totally different areas than Brad and I are. I don't mean that personally, like we're all humanists so because we're Trekkies, but like they're in the humanities, like trained. And it just made sense. So Aaron and I decided, why don't we ask others? And so that's what we four have been working on our chapters for some time. So the anthology is essentially a result of, well, you write about humility. Who are you? Let's ask everybody else to write about leadership in Star Trek. And we went for as broad of a net as possible, both uh, professional perspectives, personal perspectives, backgrounds, and so there's everything. It's like Brad's got a chapter on business ethics, right? Ethics and compassion, and it's so cool. I mean, Brad, you and I have been talking about this for how many years? Like just the need for ethics in business. Um, Michael's got this super creative chapter. I'm not even going to try to summarize it, but it's like an HR, it's almost a diatribe, but like in the best possible way, and it's almost fictional. Like you just want, like I remember I was sitting at Mazda waiting for my oil change, cruising through your chapter, like this is so much fun. How can this be this much fun? It's clearly HR stuff.
Well, now you know how I teach my classes.
Yeah, well, seriously, clearly, right. I mean, it reads like you're teaching it. Jim, you've got yours, which I'm so grateful you did, and we save yours for I think late in the anthology because I wanted it to be one of the last things people read if they actually read through, of leadership at the table, the gaming table, because you've talked about that with us in the past, right? And that's just, people don't realize that what they're doing at the table, whether it's STA or anything else, really can develop leadership skills, whether you share that with the world or it's just in your personal life. And then there are lots of other chapters. We've got astrobiology. I mean, it's just really, really cool. But that's what it is. So it's just an ongoing attempt to share the wealth of joy and compassion and insight from Star Trek, in leadership, so that people can read it whether they're leaders or not.
Yeah, let's talk about it a little bit because I think we know we focus mostly on Star Trek Adventures, Captain's Log in this podcast, which has inadvertently tripped us into RPG as literature, and we find as the years go on, we more and more are catering to people who desire to write, whether they're for themselves or professionally. So I would love to hear, starting with Brad, and then we'll go around. Is when it came to developing your chapter, and one of the things we were kind of asked to do was reference Star Trek if possible, give references to episodes or movies. What did you enjoy about that? What could we look forward to when you're talking about ethics in Star Trek? What are you referring to? What episodes are you pulling from, just to start whetting people's appetite?
Well, I'm just gonna briefly sidebar and say I'm the odd person at this table because I didn't consider myself a writer going into this. I never really, other than writing academically for degrees or anything like that, or writing professionally when I needed to in a business environment like what you do, or like what, we all have had it done, never did it. So when Jason asked me to do it, I said yes, but then proceeded to panic. So after the panic subsided, that took a couple months. Um, I knew, right away, immediately upon saying yes, Jason, without even saying it, I knew what I wanted to write about. And I immediately knew, compassion and empathy and leadership. And I knew I wanted to write about Ben Sisko. Just, favorite captain. He struggled. He struggled with ethics, not as someone who's non-ethical, but he struggled dealing with that in his role as captain. Dealing with the Romulans, dealing with everything else. It didn't take much, just because I've watched DS9 so much. I've binged it so much that off the top of my head, I could pinpoint episodes. And what I really did was, I went back to using some old techniques that I would do when I'd have to do presentations. I started mind mapping. So I literally started grabbing episodes. I grabbed, and I'm going to fail at the episode names just because I'm not really good at that. But the episode where they played baseball. Yeah, where they played baseball against the Vulcans. Love that episode. What's that?
Take me out to the Hall Suite.
Yes, thank you. Yes, you please correct me. Yeah,
I love the opposition.
Death to the opposition. I love that. Yes, love that episode. It's obviously one where Sisko struggled with this, because obviously he pulled. He was just horrendous to Rom through that whole episode. You saw him change his leadership style at the end of it. It was a learning experience for him. I pulled that one. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. I think I talked a bit about the episode with him, conspiring with Garrick. I can't remember. I should know that one, against, pulling the Romulans into the war.
In the Pale Moonlight.
Thank you. I knew it was. Yes.
Best soliloquy in all of Trek.
Yes. No, that's okay. And I should know them.
This is a fun game. I'm loving this.
Those are two, and I still have all of my outlines and everything. I actually, I kept all of it, but I went through, and then I started going through, and watched it. But I had an idea, just based off of what I knew from Sisko, where his inflection points were as a captain, as a commander, and moving into a captain, and what I wanted to show from him as where he grew and how he struggled. Because I think what DS9 showed, not that it didn't show it with the other captains, because it does, where it showed where he grew and where he struggled, where he failed as well as where he succeeded.
Yeah. And as we're going to talk more about this as we go through, I want to frame this conversation who's listening to this right now.
Yeah.
There's certain movies and TV shows that have become epic, even if it's like Star Wars, right? Sorry to introduce, but people say they find all these things in it. And what people are missing, which I consistently have to tell people who don't yet watch Star Trek, is that each episode is a gem for that social connotation and what you can learn in it. And what I've yet to see, Jason, which is one of the reasons I really like the first book I read for you and this one that I know is being put together, is I talk about this stuff in class all the time. And but I can't really get that deep with it, because if I get 30 students, I don't, at my work, one, maybe two know Star Trek, maybe, you're right. But now it's kind of like you're assembling a classroom of enthusiasts. You're like, oh, that's a deeper reference for the next time I watch this episode. So like Brad, I can't wait to read your chapter, because then the next time I watch the episodes, I'm going to have that niggling in the back of my mind. It's like, oh, another aspect I haven't yet considered from this fine literature. It's like when someone else talks about Shakespeare, the next time I read that Shakespeare play or watch a movie based off of it, I'm like, oh, that's an aspect I never caught. So I just got to say that to your introduction, Brad. What about Jim? What are we going to look forward to? Where are you pulling from for your chapter?
It was interesting. Jason invited me to pitch something to the anthology, and um, I think I don't know all the people involved, but like I'm kind of an outlier because I'm not an academic, right? I don't do a lot of academic reading. I do very little academic writing. In fact, I don't think I don't think I've done academic writing since I was in school for for college and stuff. And I had a lot of trepidation going into it because like you had, as a project manager, you were doing a great job sending out emails to everybody saying, hey, here's the things you need to work on, and here's the things you need to think about. Here's how to format your references and your connotation annotations and stuff. And I'm like, I, I'm not going to pull any references from anywhere. What do I know? Right. I'm just going to be referencing the episodes themselves. Like I haven't read some scholarly article on this thing or that thing or whatever. Not to say that they're not out there. I'm sure they're out there, but it's just they're not in my head. Like I'm not plugged into that world. And the essay I wrote is really, really personal, right? It's really like, how did I learn to be a leader by virtue of just living life? And I realized that Star Trek and role-playing games were two gigantically huge focuses of it. And that probably makes me sound like a good geek, but like really truly I learned a lot of leadership skills playing Star Trek characters, and I have all the different Star Trek RPGs to thank for that. FASA, Last Unicorn Games, Decipher, even now with Modiphius, because I became a project manager, and that's a leadership thing that's folded into all of it. And I saw leadership skills being developed in everybody I played with, right? And so I was like, well, that's a very personal story that I'm going to spin an essay and make it happen. But like when you were talking about and cite your references, and it's like I don't have any references. So like my references, like there's like three, I think, or three or four in my list, and it's mostly just because it's episodes. And Jason, I think there was one for Wikipedia, right? It's like okay. So my essay is really all about like how RPGs, not just Star Trek, but I mean really any RPG can be used as a really powerful tool to help teach people leadership, and not just leadership, but just like public speaking and interpersonal relationships and interpersonal connections, and being a leader when you may not ever think you were going to be a leader, right? I think one of the examples, and not to spoil it, but one of the examples is a lot of, especially now, like a lot of our gamers are young, right, in their 20s, still forming their worldviews and still growing as people, and early career heading into whatever's they had to look forward to. And RPGs are kind of a sneaky little secret opportunity to develop some leadership skills. So if you're playing a junior officer, I mean, even if you're playing a lower decker, right? If you watch Lower Decks, like all those Lower Decks characters still have opportunities to take a lead on a team or a project or something, and someone's going to be looking to you for guidance, and you may be peers, but if you're the one who's in charge, then that's an opportunity to develop leadership skills, even if you're just playing a character and rolling some dice and having fun, right? And so I just expanded on that, and brought in a lot of personal anecdotes, and shared some stories about some of the players that I played with. I I changed the names to make sure nobody was embarrassed.
I
am a
wonder if
writer.
there's a correlation too. I know Time Magazine has that special edition out about Dungeons and Dragons, an impact on culture. I wonder if it covers anything like that. I don't know if anyone here is.
I don't know. I saw the cover. I just haven't had a chance to pick it up yet. But I mean, sure. My personal experiences with Dungeons and Dragons did not create those kind of opportunities. I think that was uniquely for me. It was Star Trek that made that happen. I am sure there are no shortage of gamers out there who have played fantastically amazing Dungeons and Dragons campaigns and sessions, and they've had opportunities to do that kind of thing. Like I mean, I could see where it could happen, but it just, in my world experience, I did not have that kind of experience other than with Star Trek. And I think part of that's because we had hundreds of hours of episodes and amazing characters to draw from and use as models, right? Because like it's always important to have a good model for leadership. And you say, oh, people you admire, and you say, oh, I want to be like Cisco, I want to be like Kirk, I want to be like Janeway. What pieces can I take from them and put into my own self, and then genuinely carry forward as a new type of leader, using them as inspiration. So all that stuff is folded into it. So it was a lot of fun. It was a good challenge, and I appreciate the challenge. Also, this was a good challenge because it's academic writing, and I really had no no experience with that to understand like how does the whole thing work, and like then you talked about peer reviews, and I'm like, oh, how do you peer review something that's just like a personal, really deeply personal essay? Like, what are they going to do? Go research it? Like, how are they going to find research to refute it or to confirm it? I don't know.
I
So
don't know. I want
I'm
Jason to
excited.
answer that actually right now. What
Yeah.
is that? First of all, define
What's
what
that look
peer
like?
review is, Jason, in an
Mhm.
academic level, and then I want to hear the answer to Jim's question.
Well, I don't know if I'll be able to meaningfully answer the question because that's part of the vagaries of peer review. But I can explain peer review, and I'll do it in a nutshell because I geek out about this, but for the rest of the world, it's remarkably boring, maybe mundane. So, in any in any academic writing, at least that I've experienced, and understand, I'm primarily talking about research writing. So whether they're practice pieces, research pieces, theoretical pieces, but for academic journals, anything you submit is quote unquote peer reviewed. And so that almost anything, and that means that theoretically, a group of your peers of experts, I'm throwing around a lot of implied air quotes here, reviews, no, but really reviews what you wrote. This has been around since, don't quote me on this has been around since the mid or late 1700s, out of Britain. It is one of the strongest features of scientific endeavor, period. Of scientist goes and does something, then they write up the results, they make their case. That's great. It has to pass peer review. In other words, you have to be able to convince in practice two other experts or subject matter people that what you've written holds merit, right? Methodologically, conceptually, whatever. I mean, if you've got a really stinky peer reviewer, like the joke is peer reviewer number two, grammatically, whatever it is. My experience, which is limited so far, is in academic book writing. It's very similar. They're looking for different things, but it's essentially having one to two others read the manuscript, make sure it makes sense, it flows, et cetera, but with a focus not on story because it's academic, but on logic, on conveying the argument, on using citation properly, that type of thing. And so basically it's in science, and now all of academics and all academic writing, it's self-regulating. So when you hear all of this stuff about, well, people can claim anything with stats, sure, but in practice that's not how research or writing academically ever works, right? It's self-regulating, and anyone who's ever gone through peer review on a research journal and for a research journal knows that it's just tedious, but it's important. And I say this, someone who's reviewed a lot of papers, right? I try to be nice, but so that's what it is, Michael.
Okay, now I'm glad
It's
you told
looking
me
at it.
now, not
Yeah.
before I wrote my chapter. Maybe before more nervous.
Well, and I don't know, like we just sort of try to answer your actual question, your second question, and kind of Jim's question of how can one peer review this stuff. I'm not entirely sure. We actually had the option. Um, we had the option for this one. Do we want it peer reviewed? Yes, we want it peer reviewed. Thank you, sir. May I have another? But in academic circles, the peer review, it means it's passed that litmus test, right? Also, it means it can only make it better. What we conveyed to our editor at Vernon, who just seems wonderful, is that um, this is a range of chapters from a range of people. And Jim, you're in really good company on the anthology. We've got a handful of experts and thinkers and writers who have never gone an academic route, right? We have a television, right? We have well, but you guys also have like professional backgrounds, but then we have like people in the arts and fine arts who totally not academic, right? Like a television editor, right? Like this is totally foreign. And so we've conveyed and will continue to convey this is an intentionally broad range of chapters because we really want this anthology to speak to as close to everyone as we can.
Nice. And what was your chapter about, Jason?
I don't remember. No.
And what was your reference points?
I didn't have a lot of references intentionally. We wanted the chapters to be easy to read. I might have had a dozen or 15, which for me is like nothing. My chapter was on. My chapter was on.
Right. The rest of us are like, oh, okay.
Only.
Again, I'm coming from a different world.
Yeah, you're an
where I
academic,
have
so
to. Well, but as a scientist, I've got to support everything. So, like, the most I've ever had was in a theoretical paper a number of years ago, and I I had at least 120. It might have been more, but
But
that
what?
had to
But
be.
how? But what was the paper size? If it was 120, it was an academic research, right?
Yeah,
That
but it was. I
3
mean, small
pages.
print journal. It wasn't even a dozen pages. It was far less. Far.
Okay.
But books are different. There's a
Mhm.
reason we like reading books. Right?
Mhm.
I like reading articles too. The See, now you totally derailed my thought.
What
No,
was your
serious.
article about, and what were
Oh,
your
thank you.
sources?
Yeah. Well, my sources, I mean, it doesn't matter, right? It just most of my sources were like most of the chapters I was pulling out of canon. I
Mhm.
wrote about humility, and I basically wrote a series of case studies on how each of the chapters demonstrated humility and leadership, or the potential for humility and leadership. Right? It easier to do with some than others, but I really wanted to make sure that there was a chapter, an essay on humility in it, because I mean that's kind of a sticking point with me these days.
Nice. Okay. I think
So
I.
I'm.
Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
go ahead, Michael.
No, go ahead.
All right. So I want to go back to the peer reviews just a little bit. I want to get into the sausage making, Jason, if you're willing. So, like, you're saying that you write an essay, or a scientific paper or something, and then you look for experts to review it and to give feedback, and presumably those experts are familiar with the subject matter of that essay. So you're not just handing them some random essay and saying, "Hey, give me a peer review on this." So like you and Aaron, when you were pulling this team together, is it your publisher who's creating that panel of experts, or is it you guys saying, "Hey, we've got this essay." In my example, just because I'm thinking about it, Jim's written an essay about role playing games and leadership and how they develop leadership. We need to go find a couple of experts who are familiar with that kind of thing so they can peer review it. Or is it the publisher saying, "Okay, we got this panel of peer people who are willing to peer review. They may not be super familiar with each individual essay, especially since you have a wide breadth of essay topics to throw at them." I'm just curious, like, how did that piece of it happen from a project management point of view?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Typically, the publisher. So in the case of in typically, actually, I think it's the same. I mean, again, I'm still learning this too. With academic journals, the editor or the editor appointed to review first pass your paper submission, your manuscript, they will secure peer reviewers. Um, my impression from our two editors at our two publishers is it's the same. Authors are often asked to suggest potential reviewers. Like I've done that on a few papers over the past few years, especially if like the topic is more novel or esoteric, to help them find, because it's just a hard thing, right? Academic publishers for journals are making money hand over fist, but no one else gets paid anything, right? Academic publishers for books are making some money. They're like, you've got a handful of them who are making money hand over fist, but otherwise, right? This is a mission. A lot of them are nonprofit, but they secure peer reviewers. With an anthology like ours, I mean, good luck finding subject matter experts who can cover it all. My suspicion is our editor for this type of work will seek out essentially intelligent, informed scholars who probably lean toward pop culture as their background because of the exposure. And again, we'll be reading these for readability, consumability, logic of the arguments, right? That type of thing. But that's really what it is. That's handled by the journal. That's handled by the publisher. Authors can offer suggestions or guidance, but that's it, because it's a blind process.
Any book publisher is looking for a market. So who in the case of an anthology like this, who are their given markets, especially when you're coming up with such a niche subject? And where does a book like this end up? Does it end up in college classes? Does it end up on a library somewhere? Where is the final
Oh, good
landing spot?
question. So with our two publishers, so the publisher for I should clarify. So the publisher for our anthology is Vernon Press. The other books so far have been with McFarland and Company. Both great small academic presses. So they like the only bummer is these are presses who are not going to have their books in bookstores. I'm I'm working on that for book four. I'm about 5,000 to 6,000 words into that. Just started. So these are it blows my mind. Their number one first sales audience is actually academic libraries because they'll pay for them. Right. And they're stuck. I mean, it's a finite market, but they'll pay for them. But then they also want obviously a broader readership. And both Vernon and McFarland among their niches have a niche in pop culture writing. And I mean, the books coming out of both of these publishers, it's just remarkable that I had no idea really beforehand that so many people and so many scholars have written so much on so many of our favorite franchises and what they bring to the world. But it'll be academic libraries. All of them have been written so far with the notion of we really want to get these into classes. We really want to get these into graduate level, and if they apply undergraduate courses, they've all been written, including the anthology, with the note in terms of the design, the layout, with the notion of this would make for great professional or corporate training, right? I mean, for the in that arena, for given how little our book costs compared to some others, like it's pricey for a student, not from someone with a real 9 to 5 job. We've really been trying to hit it to make it as usable as possible to a broad audience. And then of course there are just going to be people who want to trek out.
Yeah.
And we've really tried to keep the style and the consistency, whether in the first two or in the anthology, like making it again as accessible as possible so that you don't have to have a background in anything per se to still learn from it, enjoy it. And hopefully, like, I can't control this in the anthology. In the first two books, it's putting in a lot of Easter eggs. Like you guys were saying, if you know, you know. It's harder to do that with the anthology, but like, I mean, some of you guys have such a ridiculously deep knowledge of Trek and lore that they're in there. So it's a bit of a hodgepodge answer, but I think that's the reality, that these types of books really have a smattering of different audiences. And you do, like with the popular press, you do have to make the argument in your proposal detailed of who are the audiences, what's the competition, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and the reason I asked that was because I was given some really good advice from Jim Johnson, from Dayton Award, from Derek Tyler Attico about expounding one's from Matt Forbeck about really, if you want to write, and we're going to get into this in part two in a little in depth, because by the way, when us group get together, we never can just be 45 minutes, just so everyone knows listening to this.
It's never one episode.
For those of you desiring to be a writer, we're going to have a lot of information in the next episode, part two of this. But I think from the advice I got from those aforementioned parties was, you may be passionate about something, but diversify your writing. Like just, if someone asks you to write, like Dayton and Matt are basically like, Matt Forbeck said, I'll write a resume. You pay me, I'll write a resume. Dayton Ward is like, don't say no to a job. And of course, keep your ethical standards, whatever you want to, write to what you're passionate about. But I'm glad that I got that advice before, for instance, you asked me to write this, because I would have been like Jim, I'd be like, I never wrote anything like this before. I don't have any idea about it. But you got to kind of trust yourself. And I also wanted to trust the editor, which we're going to talk a lot about next episode, about trusting the editor. So I asked that question because I think that kind of diversification and networking with fellow writers can actually open up a lot of doors to you. And actually, for me, it's confidence building. I think, Jason, I was nervous as all get out with this, and I was asking you like, rip me apart, tear me apart, let me know, and I really appreciated that exercise, similar to you, Brad, how you were saying how you felt about it. And I think it's important for new writers to go through that, but also to kind of understand their audience. I was very concerned about who is this going to, and as far as my understanding was, it was going to something that could potentially be used in classrooms to use Star Trek as a bridge to leadership topics, which again I'm comfortable with because of my day job in organizational development. So that's why I kind of asked that question. I want people to think, if you want to be a writer, you're not always going to be right. You aren't comic books. You may not write comics except 5% of your career. Maybe you need to learn to expand out there. So I appreciated this opportunity in this new genre of writing, I think.
I want to just add to that real quick, only because of the couple of things that you mentioned, Michael. You said that Matt Forbeck said, I'll write anything, pay me, I'll write a resume. And it made me think this might be better suited for the next episode. But as a writer, in general, every writer is different, but in general, the money should be flowing to you, right? The money should be flowing to you as a writer. You shouldn't be paying somebody else to publish your stuff. So you shouldn't be paying somebody else to, print your books or whatever. But in general, I agree with Matt in that, yes, if you're going to write something, pay me. I think Harlan Ellison is the one who's most well known for, pay the writer, right? Always pay the writer, pay the writer. And I think you, as a writer, like, if you are diversifying yourself and taking opportunities of all the different things that are out there, not only are you, working a gig or you're working your career, don't be afraid to occasionally do some free work, right? Or work on spec or work like gratis, right? Because the potential for benefits that you may not see may come from that, and you don't know, you never know, but you have to make that choice, right? And I know some writers who were thinking about um being involved in this anthology were like, no, because there's zero money in it, and I don't have the time or the bandwidth or the ability to do that kind of work right now because of my whatever circumstances I'm in. And I'm like, yeah, okay, totally get it, totally fair. But for me, I was like, this is an opportunity to do something cool with Jason and Brad and Michael and your whole gigantic slate of writers. And even though I cannot predict what's going to happen when the book comes out, there is a fair to reasonable chance that this might open doors that might not have been open before. But you don't know, right? It's a crapshoot. It's you never know what's going to happen. And so I guess just to tie on to your comment, Michael, I want to encourage new writers and veteran writers, like, if it's in your bandwidth and in your, personal worldview to occasionally do work that you're not going to get paid for in cold hard cash
in USD, yeah. Well,
USD.
yeah, I want to agree with you, Jim, because I want to say my value in some writing assignments is diversification of portfolio, which is published to prove that I can deliver on deadline or can write a variety of stuff. So thank you for that. Yeah, Matt Forbeck, he's at a different level. Dayton Ward at a different level with their full-time career writers, and they can turn away work that's unpaid because they have such a diversity of portfolio. And again, we'll talk about this again more probably in the next episode. To your point, is when you want to be a writer, you need to show you can write. Blogs can work, a podcast can work, talking about the concepts of writing. But this opportunity, something like this to that new audience, which I've never been in front of before, was like, heck yeah. And I'll even shout out Kelly Fitzpatrick, who has invited us to do classes with her and be able to talk about writing. She's a writer, of course, for Star Trek Adventures and, of course, Captain Marvel, the latest book that came out. Like, there's opportunities if you're a writer, jump in and learn the different facets of the industry and get out there and run workshops. These are things that maybe not pay right away, but you're getting the experience and meeting the people where it's going to pay off in the long run.
Well, I would say too, just I come from a different, Jim and you and I, Jim, you're unique because you have you have multiple career facets. I'm a little more, I don't know, but a little more singular in that I have just a corporate. My career path is more corporate, and so from my perspective, writing hasn't been part of that. But when I looked at it from my perspective, I look at people at with my experience, you know, I've been doing this 25, 30 years now. No, I don't look as old as I am. I guess we are on video. This is going to come out. So they're going to see the Kaufman grin. But
sorry.
Yeah. But ultimately, for me, I saw this as a differentiator. This will differentiate me. And in talking with people who I knew that worked in fields where there is analysis, whether you're going to deal with industry analysis or things like that, this type of even something like an anthology that you can put out there on a resume if you haven't done something like this before. It's a real differentiator. So for those who have never done this, who ever have an opportunity to do it, who have never written like this, you know, take a second look at it as an option. Just because Jim, you said it can open doors. For me, I saw this as, personally for me, is no downside, all upside. I couldn't see a downside to this. You know, ultimately, unless it you know, there's some delay in it getting published, or unless mine doesn't get ultimately published. But well, I know, but you know, ultimately, for me, that being out there, that's something that can be put out there, and I can show as proof of writing that can be used as, you know, part of resume, part of CV.
Well, this is, of course, one step closer to me and Jim's dream of traveling the country, going to corporations, and using Star Trek as a basis for leadership training. That's our fantasy.
I don't know, man. I mean, let's put it out there in the ether, right? Like if we could put our heads together and really think about it, I'm sure we could make it happen. I don't have that business acumen in my head yet to figure out how to connect the dots, right? I mean, I think
what have I been telling you about? I've been talking to you about this.
All the pieces are there, right? It's just like I just need help understanding how to connect it.
We need to just ask Dr. Erin. She figured it out. She took her passion. She does the talk show circuit, you know.
Yeah.
That's a high bar. I will just flip the script for a second and say how funny this is to me and how enlightening it is, because as I've been learning through this journey of writing more and writing more books, that you know, Michael, you joked that, you know, writers are paid in USD. In academia, people are, or like, publications are the credits. Right, that's how we're paid, for better and for worse, and it's different based on whether you're in the sciences or humanities, but in the academy, it's your publications are your payment in and of itself, and the only likelihood of making any potentially notable or significant money in terms of publication would be if you wrote for a popular press, right? Doesn't have to be one of the big five or whatever, but wrote for a popular press where they're in the bookstores, etc. Or I suppose one of a handful of academic presses which are distributed right through the much broader channels. And there are even reportedly some departments at some elite universities where the faculty look down on you if you write outside of academia, because why would you do that? Which is, I think, on the face of it, ridiculous, right? Like, why wouldn't you want to take what you've learned and try to share it with the world and make it a little better?
Welcome to our university, where we're going to teach you how to exist in a capitalist society, but don't you dare become a capitalist.
Yeah, that pretty much nails it down. Yeah.
All right. So with that said, because I said where I want to dig in now, we went kind of broad talking about this book and the ideas coming into it. In the next episode, I really want to. Am I still recording? Can you guys hear me? I just froze.
No, you're good.
No, you're good. We hear you.
Oh, weird. I don't know why I just froze. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we still hear you, and it says recording.
Okay,
It
perfect.
says recording. Yeah.
Sorry about that, everybody. I was about to say something so profound. I spoke against universities and they tried to shut me down.
It's AI. AI
Just so
trying
you
to stop
know,
you.
that's the world we live in. Is
Yep.
I just said that comment and they were like, "Don't educate anyone. We will." So they tried to shut me down.
Tonight, Skynet became
I
aware.
was thinking the exact same thing, Brad.
Okay. So, anyways, where we're going to go into next, because I want people to really stay tuned for where we're going to get really deep, is I want to get into the creative process on starting and managing a project. And like how do we get from the step of I have a conceptual idea and getting to the point of getting the work done. It's hard enough to do it by yourself. So we'll talk about how to do it with a lot of people, because it is nice to work on a team. I we'll talk about the benefits of that. But then also just for yourself, like how do you get through a process? Me and Jim have been dying to talk about like the outline to story point, including whether even if you're just writing RPG modules and want to figure out how to start that process. And so I think it would be great to have both Jason, Brad, continue that conversation, including about what first sparked us to want to create stories in the first place. So hopefully if you stay tuned for the next episode, we're going to get that spark with you, and then we're going to give you some template, different ways we process to get a story actually on paper. Because I think, like Jason, you gave us a deadline of how many months to get it done? I can't remember.
I think close to 6, maybe 5 or 6.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you gave us a deadline and we each had to process maybe that differently. So I think it'll be worth us talking about that in the next episode of Continuing Conversation. Sound good, everyone? All right. So we'll save our gratitude for next time when we do this. And until then, the conversation continues. Tune in next week if you really want to get some templates and some thoughts to inspire you to get your thoughts down onto paper. All right. Until next time, IDIC.
Live long and prosper. Be safe, be well. We'll see you all next time.